Today we're going to learn about weaving. First thing we need to know is that we're going to be using a loom. This is a chipboard loom and it has these wide teeth. We need to begin by putting on our warp strands. So to do this, you can use some cotton string or some yarn. I'm going to use this variegated yarn just to add a little bit of color. Begin by taking the end of the yarn, sticking a piece of tape on it, and putting it in one of the upper corners. This is going to be the back. Write your name on the tape. Notice I did not cut the yarn off the ball. You'll need the full ball because you're not sure how long you'll need. Begin by going in that first tooth and turn your board over to the front. Now we're going to go straight down to the bottom tooth. And we need to wrap around and come back up. So notice I didn't go over the back of the board. We're not going around, 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 around. This way is going to use less warp string. So I'm going to pull tight, go straight up around the top tooth, go around to the next neighbor, straight down, trying to keep that tension. It ends up being a zigzag motion. When you finish, the front should have the warp strands. The back should not have any. If you make a mistake, feel free to undo it, taking your time to fix it. Notice I'm taping the other end to the back of the board. The way that we do weavings, it doesn't matter if these two are on the top together or the bottom or opposites. Now my warp strands are on and we're going to begin to weave. Weaving is called the weft. So we have our three vocabulary words. We have loom, we have warp, and then weft. To begin to weave, you're going to choose a yarn. Then you're going to measure out a wingspan. So that means one hand holding it, stretching it all the way across your body to the other hand. And then you can let go and trim it. There's a lot of different ways to thread the yarn. I double up the yarn so that way it fills in my board a little faster. Select what type of weaving needle you want. Take one end, put it through the eye of your weaving needle, and pull all the way. Match the two tails and hold the needle in the other hand and stretch them apart to center it. We're going to begin at the top with an over one, under one weave. So that means I go over one strand, under the second, over the third, alternating every other row. When I can't go any farther, use your other hand to pinch, grab, and pull a little bit through. The name of this weave is called tabby, like a tabby cat. This is called tabby weave. It's one of the most simple patterns. Pull yours through, leave a little tail, and scooch up. Because we weave our strings so tightly, we don't usually tie our ends, but if you're worried about them unraveling, you could tie a knot here on the first warp strand. Now, instead of picking up my needle and going back to the start, I'm going to continue where I left off. I just went over this strand. So that means my next motion would be under, making this second row the opposite of the top row. If you ever forget to switch, you'll know right away because this whole two rows will pull out. If that happens, it's okay. Take a deep breath. Start again. Continue weaving until you've run out of string. When starting a new row, try not to pull so hard. Otherwise, your warp strings will start to go in like this. And that's not the look we're going for. It's real easy to start noticing mistakes when you know what to look for. Like in this one, I started under, over, but then I accidentally went under. So I can just undo this one and fix it. Remembering not to pull too hard. When you're getting low, you could lay your needle across your loom and see if there's enough string to do a full row. If there's not, you can cut it off and grab a new piece of string. For the next row, I'm going to do a variation on the tabby weave. And I want to start on a different side. I don't want to go back to this side. I'm going to go over here. In this one, I'm going to do an over 2, under 2 pattern. So over 2, under 2. Just to switch it up. Over 2, under 2. Over 2, under 2. Over 2, and then you can see I only have 1 on the end. That's okay. Continue the variation back. So I'll go over and then under 2, over 2. Another thing you can do is to weave part of the way over. So you could create these blocks of different colors. To do that, you'd start just like how you normally would. I'm just going to do the tabby weave, over 1, under 1. Get to about the middle. Now I've pulled all the way through, stopped, and now I'm going to go back. So I went under, sorry. So I'm going to go over and finish my row early. So it's making a little short row like that. If you always use the same warp string, you'll end up with like rectangular or square shapes. You could also do kind of a step-like shape where you're using different ones each time you go. When filling in the other side, you're going to weave your row over to the middle, pulling through. So I'm going to go over this string, and I need to go under this warp strand here. Basically, the black and then this yellow-green, they need to hug and share the same warp strand. Otherwise, there'll be a hole in my weaving. This time, scooch, make an opening, grab the warp strand, and continue back to the edge. One way to add some length onto your weaving without weaving is by adding tassels. Tassels are like long strands of yarn that hang off the bottom. To begin, you can select what color tassel you want. It could be 1 color, 2 color, 3 color. I'm going to take both the black and the green, and I'm using my loom as kind of a measuring tool. So I'm going to wrap around my loom, cut, and then I'm going to carefully cut just one of the edges, making sure you don't cut your warp strand. So you can slide under and snip. Now you have a bunch of pieces of yarn all the same length. To create a tassel, you're going to pick 3 or 4 strands to work with at a time. I could work with these strands with the colors together, or I could work with them separately. I think I'll try together. What we want to do is you're going to make a rainbow shape with those tassels. So I've made a rainbow shape. I'm going to take my rainbow and put it over my loom, and focusing just on these 2 warp strands. What I need to do is lift the left end of the rainbow and tuck it under the left warp strand. So see how I stuck it from the outside and I moved it in. Okay, you can move it out of the way. Now opposite, grab right, lift the right warp, tuck it under, and then you can move it away. Now grab the 4 ends and pull, and you can even kind of pull upwards to help scooch it up. So that's what a tassel looks like. Now notice it'd be really easy to pull it out. And there is something we need to do to secure it. But for now, you can flip it up so it's out of your way. Continue with the next 2 warp strands. Make your rainbow. Left side first. Lift, tuck under, right side. Gather and pull. If you have an odd number of warp strands, like I currently have 3 left over, take your rainbow, lay it over the 3, take the left side strand, tuck the left side under, skip the middle, and work with the right hand one to tuck the right side of the rainbow under. So it's just going to be a little bit wider of a tassel. Now, to ensure that those don't fall out, you need to do some tabby weaves in there. So pick a color that's the same as your tassels. And you need to do at least 2 rows, if not 3 rows. Scooch those up tight before flipping them down. If your tassels are uneven, you can give them a little bit of a haircut, but I would wait until you are done taking this off because you might accidentally cut your warp strands. If you're done weaving, you want to think about your ends. Leaving these untied gives it a chance that this might come apart. If it's woven correctly and tightly, it's less likely to fall apart. But if you're worried about it, you can take some of your ends and just tie them together in a double knot, or you can take ends and tuck them underneath different warp strands to kind of give them an extra securance. So I can take this one and tuck it into the design and then just cut the extra off. The top one's always a good one to tie. I'm going to slide 1 strand under, keep 1 strand over, tie with a double knot. Let's talk about taking our weavings off of the loom. If you've wove all the way from the top to the bottom of the loom, it's going to be a little easier to take your weaving off. Let's first talk about weavings that did not get woven all the way down to the bottom, like mine. What we're going to do is we need to take off these loops, or you can even just cut them. You want to cut them on the long side, so cut towards the bottom. And you need to take 2 warp strands and tie a double knot. You don't need to tie very tightly, because if you tie too tight, you're going to actually scrunch up your weaving. If you have an odd number, like my warp strands, I have 3 left, take 2 in one hand, 1 in the other, and just tie them together in 1 knot. And then the rest of the steps are for all types of weavings, especially if you've woven top to bottom. You're going to turn your loom over, undo the tape, and pull the loops off of the teeth. Return the loom to your teacher. And then next, we need to thread a stick or a straw or some sort of material to hold this weaving in place at the top. So I have a little dowel here. Basically, I'm gonna put it on like a curtain. So taking that first loop, going in, second one, slide your weaving to the center of the stick. If you have an odd number, you might end up with a tail or even 2 tails, depending upon how you warped it. And what needs to happen is this needs to be tied in a knot. So I can scooch the weaving down. If you need an adult to help you with this, they can. Make sure it's a double knot. There we go. In a weaving where you went all the way down to the bottom, you do the same process of flipping the board over, pulling off the loops, and then you can thread a stick through both the top and the bottom, or just the top. Now that it's off, if you want to comb and trim any tassels or any ends that you missed, you can do that. Flip your weaving over. If you were able to save the tape with your name, you can stick it on. Otherwise, if you need a new one, grab a new piece of masking tape so that way your work is labeled. And the last step is we need to attach a string to the top here so we can hang it. Grab a medium length strand, make a loop, slide the loop on, and tie another knot to secure. Do the same on the other side. Congratulations, you've finished your weaving.